Okay, it is 7:30. June 20th, the last meeting of the so-called fiscal year for the Village of Martin's Additions Council. And first thing we will do is call on our weatherman and astronomer to tell us about the seasons and the weather.
Not sure anybody wants to hear from me because if you don't like the heat, you better get used to it because it's not just gonna be the rest of this month. It's gonna be the entire summer right into September. We're looking at an unprecedented event. Because of the configuration of the jet stream, most of the intense heat in this first wave has gone to places that is unheard of, to have temperatures in the upper 90s flirting with 100 degrees and dew points higher than here, higher than New Orleans has experienced. I'm talking about, let me real quick here read what a meteorologist in Portland sent me, a friend of mine. Presque Isle and Caribou, Maine are only 13.5 miles apart. And they have the hottest temperatures and the highest heat indices of the entire state of Maine. At 8 p.m., the temperature at both locations was 89 degrees with a heat index of 95.
At 8 a.m.
And it's gotten 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
And did I say a.m.? Well, then I stand correct. Bangor, Maine today had a heat indices of 109. I can't remember the last time it was that high here. Anyway, I don't see any rain. We could get some thunderstorms in the afternoon, scattered variety by Sunday. But the heat goes on, the beat goes on. You might get after 5 or 6 or 7, 8 days in a row of temperatures in the 90s, maybe flirting upper 90s to near 100, the century mark. You might get a day in the upper 80s with a little bit lower humidity, but get used to it, folks. And I'll be
Okay.
back up.
That's it?
That's it.
No, we're not set.
Hazy, hot, and humid.
Okay.
The summer sing along, and welcome to the first day of summer.
I can't remember the time.
First day summer.
Did I do something potentially to offend you to not get a cold bottle of water?
I think
Oh, well, you took mine, Jeff. I brought my own.
Katie always brings her own, so I brought 4 out, one for each. Oh, look at that.
Okay, okay. Residents' comments. We have some residents here. I can hear you breathing.
Hi, it's Marty.
Hello?
I can't get my camera to work. I'm having technical trouble, but I'm here and thank you all for meeting again. And I just wanted to check and make sure with the staff. Michael, is the village office comfortable with these high temperatures? I mean, it faces south and west so that you're getting like a lot of afternoon heat there. And I just want to make sure, are you guys okay?
I think it's too cool in here, Marty.
Oh, the air conditioning's cranked up and it's working?
Would you know who to call if
It's cooking,
We have air conditioning, so it's
air
okay.
conditioning, and they also have shades.
Okay, good. Want to take good care of y'all. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Michael, anyone else have hands up?
No hands up.
No hands up, okay. Let us move on then, to the, minutes of the last meeting. I don't recall having seen them.
I sent them around and they're in the packet.
Oh, in the packet today.
They're on page 2.
Can I take a look and send you my, vote, after I have a chance to look at it?
Sure.
Okay,
The weather report certainly was a lot more acceptable,
okay.
according to Keith.
Has anyone else seen the minutes?
I haven't seen them, but I'm reading them now and they look just fine to me.
Okay,
I think I included them in an email to you all last Friday, but
so we're.
Oh, but that was a week
it's
ago.
okay.
I didn't
Arthur
see it
was
there.
Still, somewhere in.
In Italy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Al, if everyone else has seen them and are ready to vote to approve, we can. Okay,
I move.
I'll second.
Okay. To approve the minutes, all those in favor, raise your hand, aye. We have 4 and 1 abstain. I haven't read them. Okay, we are now going to our committees. It's the end of their year and they have things that they're just dying to tell us. To begin with the election committee. You don't have to read it all, you can summarize.
Okay, I'd like to thank the council for its support for the election this year and the election committee. We did three big things this year, and I have to say the team on the election committee this year was just super, really terrific. Jen Bergeron and Naomi, and of course John Sharrow and Paul Weller, who you all know well. They were just a tremendous team to work with. It was really a pleasant experience and positive and productive. And that was good because we had a lot of work to do. We consolidated the 5 different 2023 election regulations into one efficient document. You can see that we did a very open process with that. Welcome community input and suggestions, welcome council input, and of course from Michael. I mean, just to really try to do things well. And we appreciate that. We also did a second very big thing this year, which was to shepherd that voter verification project through. The contractor was superb. We again thank the entire committee. Thanks to the council and Michael for helping us make sure that contract got in place in time for us to do it. Turned out to be more important even than we knew, with 122 people on the voter roll who had died or moved away, which was significant. And so we put the village elections, not just this year, but going forward on a much sounder footing. And that's an important thing to do just for election integrity and because we try to do things well at Martin's Additions. So the election procedures got consolidated and updated to include the new definition of who's a qualified voter. And again, that was something the council did last summer. We were able to incorporate it in this year's regs. We had transparency and community input. The public voting information was really sort of state of the art. The election information packet was accurate and complete, went out on time and print and was online and copies in the office. The election forum was fair and went very smoothly. We had good questions from the community, and we were more open this year in terms of letting people send us questions in various ways. And the community responded to that with some good questions. And again, the voter roll verification project was a pretty big deal and took a considerable amount of work, but was done well. Ballot handling went like clockwork. The ballot return envelopes this year had both the postage on the return envelopes and the postal tracking this year, which was really great. The voter services, the committee was able to instruct Eclectic to give early ballots to people who asked for those and send timely replacement ballots to people who needed replacements. The election drop box worked well. We had good security on that. We're able to give the 72 completed sealed envelopes to Eclectic that same night. There were no security issues there. The ballot curing, again, thank you for including ballot curing in the election regs. As a result of that, we had no voters or ballots disqualified this year. The one voter who had forgotten to sign his envelope was really pleased to be able to have the opportunity to sign the replacement affidavit and be able then to have us tell Eclectic to open his envelope and count his votes. So we got kudos there from our voters, our citizens, for having that provision in. The vote counting, I think the entire council was present for the vote counting. You all know that went perfectly straightforward, no problems there. All votes that were received were counted and included this year. And the election results were promptly posted. We have some recommendations. None of these should be a surprise to the council. The committee has all along unanimously recommended that the consolidated 2024 election procedures be adopted as an ordinance to help stabilize this process from here on out. We had no drama this year. I mean, in terms of the election running smoothly, there was no disruption about it. And we'd like to keep it that way. We'd like to have nice, stable, transparent elections from here on out. So we continue to recommend that you adopt the 2024 regulations as a standard ordinance to stabilize the process. We also, back in February, Arthur, you may recall, asked the committee for some specific recommendations about various items that had come up during the council's discussion of the regs this year. And those items were listed in February, and we just resubmit them here as attachment A. Again, the committee unanimously recommends council action on all of those. And the number 3 recommendation is, in light of the contractor's findings this year, it's probably important to consider doing independent verifications of the voter roll on a regular basis every few years. We really appreciate what the council did in the last 2 years to stabilize our elections. And really, I think what makes them stable is having open, public, transparent procedures for clear, fair, independent management of the election, and the respect for voting rights. I think one of the things that has upset some of our citizens in the past was voters being needlessly disenfranchised. And we now have a set of regulations that doesn't do that anymore, that basically takes voting rights very seriously and says that our neighbors' rights to vote will be respected. So the good regs that we have this year, I think, really are a step forward. We're on the right track. I hope we can keep them. And the entire committee would like to thank the council for your support, for the ballot tracking, the postal tracking that we had, obviously for the big election voter roll verification process. We don't expect to have that expense every year, but it was really important to do that this year. We thank you for all the important election improvements we were able to do this year. And we also want to thank Katie Howard for her support. Her support as our committee liaison, and big thanks to Michael Silliman for all his technical assistance, which really is important and will continue to be important for future committees. Last but not least, we would recommend some stability on the election committee if you can do it. We think that would help to also stabilize the election process going forward. So thank you from the committee, and we're very pleased that this year's election went so well.
Okay, I had one or two questions. Marty,
Sure.
There were 5, or I don't know how many, a handful of envelopes are returned by the post office, returned to sender, despite all this assiduous work in trying to figure out who lives where and who was alive and so on. Do you have any idea of why that handful of envelopes were returned? Had the people moved in the meantime?
Yeah, we had
perhaps
some late moves. We also, one of the nice sort of byproducts of this whole process this year was that we educated our population that if you get any kind of election envelope from us or from the county, and the person doesn't live there, that you shouldn't just toss it, you should return it, that's really important.
Okay.
The county voter roll depends on that. And so we really did a lot of what I call civic education. And so people actually did return envelopes this year. We only had 5, which is a tribute to how thorough the contractor, Julian Lampier, was. But they were recent moves, and I think one of them was a recent death. So that now is really important because Michael and the committee will be providing those marked envelopes to Boris, the director at the County Board of Elections, because he asked us to provide that to him to help him update the county and state registration. So I think we should count that as really positive. Number one, there are only 5, not 100. And number 2, there were the civic education seems to have taken root, that people now know they need to return those envelopes. So that's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Well,
I actually
Go
have a
ahead.
question
Go
for
ahead.
Marty.
Go ahead.
I'm a little unclear as to what your process was for the candidate forum questions. And I wonder if you could please provide a list of the questions and the process that was used to arrive at those questions, since they did seem to be, it seemed odd that such a high percentage would be devoted to one topic. So if you could just provide us with that list, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. The list came entirely from residents. The committee did not write any questions, make up any questions, create any questions. We did organize them into category, and I actually thought that they covered a large range of issues. But I'm happy to provide them now. The only restriction on the election questions is that the committee is not supposed to give them to the candidates before the forum. But
Obviously.
afterwards, that's fine. Most of them, I think, almost all of them came in on the committee email, the VMA elections email. We had, I think our vice chair, Paul Weller, was able to take a question or two, maybe by phone, but I don't know that he did, actually. I mean, I'm looking at them right now. I just pulled them up. And all the ones that we turned in to the moderators all came in on the website. I mean, on the village election committee email. So yeah,
Okay,
there's a full
that's
record
good.
of those, and you
Good.
can see them. And
Good.
glad to do it.
Great, thank
Any
you.
other Comments, question? I am going to recommend that at our next meeting, that we take up this list for future council consideration and consider them. So I will ask everyone to do their homework, review them, see which ones we want to seriously review. And Michael, could we ask Ron for his, Ron, are you here tonight? Is Ron here?
Yeah, I'm here, and I can
Okay,
do that.
if you could take, just, add a sentence or two to each of these recommendations, with your analysis or review of them for our review.
Okay,
and
will
so-
do.
There's 9 of them on this list. And I know you've seen them before, so. Okay, Ron, you were gonna say something?
No,
Okay,
nope,
Okay.
good to go.
okay, good, thank you. And anything else? Okay,
I think the only thing I would add, would be going forward, it sounds like, everyone seems to be pretty reasonably happy with the product that we have. So hopefully for next year, whoever or
Is
we
going
as
to
a
be-
council can say,
straight down the
could
line.
could you please, if you have any edits, make them in red line so we could see a very clear understanding between what is being proposed. That
Right.
would be great.
Okay. Moving on to the committees, is Naomi here or somebody from the anti-Semitism? Okay. Nate, please go.
Hi, sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Nathaniel Edelstein. I serve on the Anti-Semitism Task Force. And so to begin, we were charged after the council voted to sign on to the resolution that was originally proposed by the town of Chevy Chase, condemning anti-Semitic acts. This was also supported by the county. We were charged with implementing an awareness and education campaign in support of the resolution. The resolution was developing an anti-Semitism awareness public education program, and it's an initiative of the Montgomery County municipalities. So we did a few things during the course of the year. We focused on what was happening locally, an increase of anti-Semitic incidences, as well as nationally, an increase in anti-Semitic incidences. One of our goals was to host at least one event to provide educational opportunities for residents. We did that. We had a webinar in partnership with AJC. It was conducted by professionals at AJC, the American Jewish Committee, which is an organization that helped to develop the national strategy to combat anti-Semitism that was launched by the Biden administration in May 2023. We had about 120 people on 100 screens that included VMA residents as well as others. We opened it up to the larger community, and the VMA residents comprised about 25% of that. We also, another goal was to conduct an assessment to determine what residents wanted to learn about anti-Semitism. So we did that with AJC as kind of part of the webinar experience. So we had, before the webinar, AJC conducted a survey to assess what the registrants wanted to learn, and that helped guide the topic and the discussion in the webinar itself. A survey was also conducted after the webinar as well, and that taught us some things. The number one thing we learned is that people in the village want to know how to talk to children about anti-Semitism, increasingly so now. And again, we're having another webinar in July. I want to say it's July 16th, but I have to double check that, with AJC to discuss that. So that's something we're going to be offering to the community. We also wanted to conduct outreach to neighborhood municipalities, and led by Naomi, and also with help from Andrew Cotters, one of our liaisons. They reached out to other leaders from other communities, and we began conversation with them, and that helped us to, first of all, learn a lot about what is and what is not happening in other communities, but also to invite them to some of the things that we have been doing and are doing, such as the webinars. Another goal was to offer relevant resources to VMA residents. So we've done that on the page on the VMA website. We've been posting resources there with the help of Michael. And we also, during Jewish American Heritage Month in May, led by Naomi, we worked with libraries to exhibit books celebrating the contributions of Jewish Americans in in various parts of American history and in current day as well. And then finally, another goal that we hope to that we did have that we haven't yet accomplished is to host a keynote speaker for an event in the future, and also to invite. One thing we've been talking about is inviting non-Jewish neighbors to participate, in meals with Jewish neighbors. So those are things that we did not quite get to that I think we're still talking about. That if in the future maybe those could happen. And we are recommending. I think this task force started before we saw a huge increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. and locally, and so even more so now, we're strongly recommending that the task force, that the council approve a 1-year extension for the task force. So that's the summary, and I do want to give a special thanks to everyone in the council who was involved in meetings and support for the task force this year. Katie, really came to so many meetings and helped out a lot. And special thanks to Jeff and Andrew for your support as liaisons. Really meant a lot. And for me, this was my first task force experience. It was a great learning experience, and I think it's very heartening to see that this is something that the council and the village has prioritized. So thank you.
The other municipalities that had their own committees but had not done anything really looked to Martin's Addition and to your work to latch on to take advantage of the seminar that you put together. That was, as you noted, widely viewed by communities, all the communities around us. So you did the effect that you had was much broader than Martin's Additions. Any other observations, comments?
Yeah, I was gonna say, first of all, Nathaniel, thank you very much, and to all the other members and under Naomi's leadership, I thought you guys did a great job. I guess my question is, parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. For an extension of a task force, is that a vote we take at some point at our first meeting in July?
I think, I think because this will be a decision made for that council
The next
at that in the next fiscal year,
Okay,
that we should delay it until then.
okay, so discussions of adding that to the agenda.
But if you have thoughts on it, don't discuss it among yourselves, but think about it, and you can send them to me. So I can kind of review them and consolidate them.
The only,
Yeah.
I guess, minor point is they have some activities coming up in July.
In July,
So.
but they were scheduled now, so.
Scheduled now.
Yeah.
And then also if I remember correctly, technically speaking, the task force didn't start probably until at least September. So, I mean, if you look at it as a 12-month versus a calendar.
No,
You don't
by code, they end on the end of the fiscal year.
The temporary task force.
Yeah.
do. Okay.
All right, so we have,
Sure. So how do you want to deal with the fact that they still have an activity in July?
I seems okay with me. It was reviewed, decided, everything within this year. The fact that it goes over to the next one is seems reasonable to me.
Sounds good.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay,
Save 'em.
we have a written review from the Ethics Committee. Do we have anyone, is there anyone there who wants to discuss it?
The chair, Alex, told me last minute he couldn't make it to this meeting.
Okay.
I
So,
understand.
but they did submit the written one, so.
So it is in the packet, for anyone to review. Okay, anyone who's here from the Stormwater?
But before we move
Oh,
on.
yeah, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to, so, Michael, remind me, you're going to MNL?
MML
It's a tongue
next week,
twister.
yes.
Yeah. You do me a small favor, maybe keep your eyes and ears open about the availability of ethics training that's available perhaps from other municipalities or even the state, because I think the idea that there may be some training modules that whether it's committee members or actual officials could take. I think, you know, it's kind of a big burden to keep up to date with training, and it's a particularly a very specialized field. So I think it would be very helpful. I had a discussion with MML officials several years ago, and there were some folks from the county. In fact, there was a county training I did that was very helpful, but it was mostly focused on the financial side. So I'm just curious if anything has changed since.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. Is Mark here? Or what?
He said he was gonna join at 8, after his appointment, so, maybe we could go with,
Okay.
Keith and the community engagement next, and then.
Okay,
social water.
community engagement, we'll get back to water.
Okay, I think Yasmina is pretty well prepared here. I'd like to have her do the presentation.
Yasmina, we want to get you on camera. Okay.
We're getting ready for a big event here a week from Sunday. And we have everything all lined up. We've got the vendors lined up, the food trucks, face painter, and I just recently spoke with the fire department over here. We're gonna use the Company 7 personnel on Connecticut Avenue. And they are expecting to be here unless they get a run, unless they get a call during that time. So weather-wise, it looks okay. It's not gonna be intensely hot. Let's just say right now, it's a normal type of 4th of July forecast. Mostly sunny, hot and humid with chance of a late afternoon thunderstorm. And then we're gonna be preparing for our movies in the park. Our movie nights, which will take place in August and in September. And then the very popular Halloween parade, the end of October. And I think that pretty much rounds out the year, doesn't it, Michael? And we're excited about what we're doing.
Good.
And if you have anything to add to that, Yasmina, please do.
I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
I'll feel this.
If the microphones did not pick that up, it was kudos to the chair.
Well, I'm very excited about what we're doing.
Okay. Well, until the chair of the water committee appears, let's move on. And I think the next thing then will be budget, a budget adjustment.
Let me find it. Well,
Here-
Michael.
here, it's on page 32. There it is.
You know, the reality is Michael prepared this in great detail, and you know, Michael, is there anything you want to share? This is pretty perfunctory stuff where each year, you know, we make some modest adjustments based upon over, under, and everything looks very reasonable. And you know, the shifts that he's proposed are right in line, so there's nothing unusual here. But if you wanted to, you know, take a gander, or is there anything that you wanted to?
Let me preface all this by saying that the village code requires that we cannot spend money that has not been appropriated. And over the course of the year, we have something like 40 budget items. We know that some things are going to be running over and some things are going to be running under. It's hard to predict a year in advance. And so sometime near the end of the fiscal year, which ends the end of this month, we make adjustments, usually moving money from the underspending to the categories that are overspending. And we have a number of relatively small, running from $10,000 to $20,000, $6,000 to $20,000 of categories that have overrun, and plenty more on categories that have underrun. And so what Jeff and Michael have produced is a list of movements from one to the other.
Okay.
So,
And I can say, the council's been made aware of each of these overages and has approved them as the year has gone on. So this is just a formality of approving what you have already approved. And I've outlined which categories those are that money is being transferred from. The one exception is the community events. That line item hasn't actually gone over yet, but we're anticipating it going over because the 4th of July party is on June 30th.
On the last day of the fiscal year.
And so that's our biggest, most expensive event of the year. And because we're having 2 4th of July parties in fiscal year 24. So we're just covering that with that transition.
Thank you.
And just putting that in perspective, what Arthur had mentioned, so correct me if I'm misquoting, but even if we were over by $1, we would still have to report it because by statute, it's just you're over. So again, it's $1.50, you're over. So that's kind of where we are.
And we also have already passed next year's budget, and we've kind of adjusted several categories, especially the tree planting initiative. We've been overspending that and raising it slowly. So we raised that for next year to try to be more in line with reality.
Good.
And I see Ron is off camera. Ron, did you have something to add?
Probably not necessary, but just to add to Arthur's summary, and a supplemental appropriation requires a supermajority vote, 4 votes, but don't anticipate any controversy here.
Okay, and Ron, one quick question. Can we do this as one single motion, or does it have to be
Yes.
item by item?
No, it can be one motion.
Okay, so I will move money from the underspending items as listed in the treasurer's budget adjustment document to the overspending items also as listed in the treasurer's budget adjustment document. I so moved. We need a second for that. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. And we have a super majority. Good, it passes. Thank you.
That was super.
Okay, Michael, will you introduce the subject of the safety improvements to the back alley here onto, coming from, Taylor, from Taylor onto Curtin.
Yes, page 33 of your packet has the proposal. The council's already seen this, but I want it to be a public document, so I included it in the packet. This came about as a result of several complaints about safety concerns at council meetings in the past.
Including among one of our council members,
Most
least
recently,
one. Possibly two.
Jeff having a close call at that exit of the parking lot. And that conversation. So I went ahead and contacted our traffic engineer who does a bunch of our signage updates and those types of things for us, and asked him what he would recommend, and asked him to come up with a proposal for both the parking lot's not ours, but the right of way is on both sides, including the sidewalks. So we asked for the traffic engineer to come up with a recommendation for the entrance to the parking lot behind the Brookville Market and the exit onto Turner Lane. Noting several of the instances that have happened, especially the things that have been reported about cars pretty routinely driving down the wrong way of the exit. So this is what came back, a list of proposals of what he would recommend for those entrances and exit points. It's for you all to consider. You know, we don't have to do all of these things. We could do some of them. We could propose other ideas.
Did we ever get a tentative cost estimate for that?
Yes, I spoke to him most recently today on the phone about that point. He anticipates if we did all of these things, he anticipates it would be about $12,000. And that would include the repaving, to get some of the markings to stick to the concrete. The concrete will need to be improved. On the entrance specifically, the concrete is kind of gravelly and crumbly, so the stripping
Patched and
won't
repatched.
stay as well. So we probably have to redo that patch. And then on the exit, it's actually concrete, not asphalt. So a lot of the painting markings won't show up as well. So that would include, if we had a paving contractor, which I don't right now, as the council will remember, that would include that cost.
Now, some of this will involve cooperation with the property owner, correct?
Ron can jump in on that question as well. I believe if we're in the public right of way, and we're doing things like signage and stuff, I don't think we would need their
So all
property
of the,
approval.
all of these suggested changes are in the public right of way?
I believe so, yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
We still want to cooperate with
So
them.
the one question I have, and I think this is something that Jeff and I had discussed, that, you know, the signs are great. There's signs there right now that are not being often, I mean, he's experienced it much closer than I have. I've been within spitting distance of getting hit, but I've never been touched. I still think a gate, some kind of, but what that would require, I mean, that will enforce, no one can be driving in. But the problem with that is you'll need some kind of measure inside the parking lot that's, you know, based on weight of a vehicle to cause it to open. So that would require obviously engagement with the owner of this property here. And also would increase the costs. I'm not sure what the cost is.
And Joe had some problems with that. Do you want to, you raised this?
Yeah, and Ron might be able to speak more to this as well, because he had some concerns. But Joe Kutro did as well, that you're not allowed legally to block a private entrance to a property. So Ron, is that right?
Yeah, basically. So the village does control the right of way, but as there's an existing entry there, it would require some cooperation to alter that. I do think Andrew's proposal was to have the gate on the landlord's property. So if the landlord.
I mean, the gate itself, I'm not sure how physically you would, you know, how you would design this. I don't know where our property begins. Is it that the grassy knoll? Or where does it begin?
Well, and
Basically.
there's a complication with the surveys, because this building and this property is so old
Yeah,
that where exactly the property line isn't exactly clear to me, but for all intents and purposes, the sidewalk can be considered ours. We have maintained the sidewalk. We built the sidewalk in front of the market all the way up to the building.
right.
So we're just kind of
So we can't
proceeding as
build
if
it.
the sidewalk is ours.
We can't build a gate on the, like, right on the sidewalk or causing trouble with, you know, ADA, whatever requirements for the sidewalk. The question to me is, we're not blocking the entrance to a private property because they're not supposed to drive in from that side anyway, and you're not being blocked on your way out because it would be, the gate would lift with a vehicle coming out of the parking lot. I'm not gonna die on this, you know, but I still think it would be obviously much more effective to have some physical
Joe
barrier.
was a little leery of that
Yeah.
proposition.
I was just gonna ask,
Well-
yeah, what if the businesses, the shops or the landlord opposes? I mean,
No, I mean, it
yeah.
wouldn't work unless the landlord, of
Right.
course, approves it, because
Mhm.
that would require the weighted or whatever the mechanism.
And
is
I'm
to
wondering
open the gate.
also, just to wonder,
mm,
of emergency vehicles trying to come in. from
Right.
that,
They drive right
if they
through the
had to
gate
get
in an emergency, just like they,
Yeah.
you know, break through a door if they have to get into a house. I mean, that, I'm not, or it's a cost to us, I guess, or whoever pays for that, but
Good.
Jeff?
So yeah, you wanted to say something, Mr.
No, go ahead, please go ahead.
So just a couple thoughts, and first of all, take this in the best possible way. First of all, I was a little surprised to see the report, and I didn't have a chance to provide input into it before it was written. And I share that because while I appreciate the mention of a council member, I really felt the context was limited. I mean, we've talked about why this is such a critical juncture because of all the children who go past the schools, and also because it's the same street that people go very frequently to go down to the park. So I kind of read this, but I really felt it didn't capture the context of the urgency of the problem. And then the idea that it was the prudent approach, really, I think, for me, was not the right context or wording around this, because again, I felt that it really missed the mark, because as Andrew was alluding to, there's signage, and the idea that additional signage is going to make a difference. I mean, like this morning when I was dropping our daughter off at camp, I saw UPS you know, go down and make a turn. So the reality is, I think it's also because folks know that they can do it and nothing's gonna happen. And, you know, not everyone is like that, but I think that there are some regulars that do it because they know, yeah.
And because of the incline, there's a blind spot. And a lot of the trucks, the landscaping trucks, they go up there, they can't even see because they come up, you know, they come up with a little bit of momentum to get over the top of that. I just think there's a blind spot and that's a risk as well.
So here's the 2 cents. Now, I appreciate legally, and then I also appreciate the idea we have to speak to Shirazi, because without his cooperation, it's a no deal. But I would just make a suggestion, Michael, maybe you could open that up and invite, we have a conversation with Shirazi and we could talk to him.
Well, before that, I'd like to get some better technical engineering
Yeah.
idea. It's like, the question would be, if we had the authority to do anything we wanted here, what would be like the max solution? And then kind of work back from there. Do you think Joe could do something like that? Beyond what he suggested, is there anything additional that could be engineered?
Well, I didn't write this report.
Right,
Joe Kuchar
right.
did.
Yeah.
I did, you know, emphasize the situations that have happened and
Yeah.
actually walked the site with him and went through all these different, you know, proposed options.
Yeah.
And then this is what he came back with, you know,
Right.
with his expert.
I mean, what you're suggesting is bulldozing, leveling off that part of the hill, that part of the slope.
No, I'm just saying that because of the slope, there's a blind spot and as you probably could see, often, I see it every day, cars come up there with a
Well,
little
coming
bit
up
of
from,
like,
from the alley?
from the parking lot.
Yeah, okay.
They come up there with a little bit of momentum
Right,
to
to
get
go,
over
yeah.
the slope. And they stop really at on the sidewalk. They don't stop before the sidewalk often. They just stop on the sidewalk if we're lucky, and then they look and continue on. So I think, you know, a gate, now, this is also a financial
Yeah.
cost, right? It's not to him. So the question is, does he want to have a parking lot on his property that provides for safe entrance and exit? The cost will be on us if we, you know, ultimately decide to.
I'm wondering if there are other than a gate, if there are other
Spikes.
mechanisms.
We'll have a lot of flat tires going in, you know.
Manager wants a spice.
Um,
So.
What were Joe's arguments? I didn't speak with Joe. I mean, what are the
Yeah, what was his
counter?
argument against the
Yeah.
gate?
Yeah,
If it
what-
was-
what are
Did he
the-
have?
I mean, it's the
Probably all counter.
third paragraph on his report.
I don't see that.
where's that?
So the traffic flow onto a private driveway from a public street is normally under the control of public agent.
Oh, here, an actual gate would be an unusual treatment.
I don't necessarily agree with that synopsis, because I think there are comparable lots that are that size or even perhaps a little larger that have it. So I appreciate the questions are important ones, and I felt that at the end of the day, it was a discussion with the owner, because we're not gonna be able to do something that's solely on right of way. So the question is, will the owner budge? And if
Right,
not,
right.
then that's fine though,
Okay.
but we could at least then make it very clear that this is an issue and a concern of public safety, and have it on record that we expressed that with them.
So the question then seems to be coming, I'll revise my past suggestion. Would a gate, in his traffic engineering knowledge and experience, make a difference? Would it provide the kind of additional safety that is being asked for?
Yeah, I mean, and so his commentary that it would not be well received by the proprietor. I mean, like, does he have some kind of knowledge of how this proprietor would receive this gate? If anything, I think, you know, I don't think it'll not hurt the aesthetics
Right.
or any other.
So the question, if we own that alley, would a gate make sense? And we didn't have to worry, and we didn't have to deal with a landlord.
And the final thing, I know this is really in the weeds, but if we remember before COVID, we had those incidents of aggressive assault at the pharmacy. And I don't know, I don't recall the details if they had a car or not, or if they had parked in the back. But again, it could also be a deterrent to theft because you don't have as easy access of going in and out of that lot. So I'm just putting out that there are definitely things about it that are a positive and not simply all the other things that were against it.
So raise it with them
Yeah, I'd be happy.
as an alternative.
Raise it with who?
With
Sorry,
Joe.
raise with Joe about the
A
safety
gate,
concerns.
a gate. Would a gate work? Would a gate do what we wanted to do?
Right, not whether the gate would be well received.
Right.
Or would not, we could try for signs first. But I think we've tried signs for the last 30, 40 years here. And people take advantage of just signs and nothing else. I'm happy to join, Jeff, anyone else in a conversation with Joe, just to kind of walk it through.
Andrew, if he goes in and he wants something, I'm sure that he'll get it at the meeting.
I mean, I'm just, and look, Joe's an expert, I get it. But we're pretty, I think, reasonable and logical people here, and the proprietor, that he shouldn't worry about the proprietor.
Yeah.
We'll worry about the proprietor and the owner of this, and see if we can find a solution, an engineering solution, and then see if we have the financial capacity to pay for such a thing. Again, this goes to if there's one less person that gets hit or bumped by a car, that's a win. In my opinion.
One modest question, and maybe ask Joe, and again, I don't know if it's going too far, but is this his area of specialty? I mean, has he ever installed these? So I'm just wondering, there are other lots, smaller lots in Bethesda and nearby municipalities, and I'm wondering if there may be even some outreach to those shopping centers and even the folks who installed it, just so we could get a little bit of that input. I think that would be.
I don't recall.
I just think that it's.
If you see any, make a note of it.
If it were a flat
I don't
exit
recall
like
seeing
this,
that.
What's that?
I don't recall seeing any.
I don't
Gated.
recall.
Yeah, I took some
Exits, but-
pictures. I have some examples.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Yeah.
Moving on.
Mark Schaefer's on.
is Mark Schaefer?
Yes, he's
in?
on
Trevor
there.
is on, yes.
He's here. Okay, Mark, you are here and ready to go, raring and ready to go. So let's hear all about the water committee.
I am unmuted, which
Yes,
you've
you
done
are.
you've done that at your own peril. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all. I think that some of you know a lot about what we've been doing, but just in case, I'll dig in a little bit of depth to try to help everybody catch up. So we were created, last year, October of 23. And we were the second Stormwater Management Committee. The first one was created, I think, in 2010. I read their report. It was actually a pretty good report, but the hole in it was that it didn't take the council from there's more water to there's a big problem that has to be fixed. And so we started sort of cautioned by that. And we spent a lot of time educating ourselves because none of us were stormwater people, although, yeah, I guess I had 2 stormwater lawsuits between neighbors, but I don't think it prepared me for this. And we needed to be trained. We needed to find out what everybody else was doing. And so we did all those things, and it took months, to be honest, it just took months. We looked at, we were in touch with not most, but about half of the other cities around here that are involved in this problem. There are 11 villages and towns that are working on this problem that surround us. Of those 11, 10 of them have hired engineers. Usually Mr. Azar, because he's sort of the guy. There are various stages in their work. And just to frame this all up for you, the hardest part about doing this work, well, there's 2 pieces. The hardest part should be collecting the data, documenting the data, because a person can think they have a stormwater management problem, but they don't. Or they can think they have a stormwater management problem that's caused by X when it's caused by Y. And they can think that it's a new problem and it can be an old problem. That's what you need an engineer for, to figure all that stuff out, because we can't do it. But that's not the hardest part. And we're just starting that with our survey. So we're trying to get people to give us their experiences, and then we'll test them and investigate them and all that stuff. The hardest part is developing a consensus as to what to do. And I think that involves, I'm a little bit shy about bringing the community in before I have a clue as to what I'm talking about. So we didn't really have a lot of public meetings for a while because I didn't want us to give wrong answers. So now I think we're gonna have regular meetings that are public, because we've got to sell ourselves and sell this issue, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, and build a consensus. Chevy Chase, View, and Somerset have done remarkably good jobs of investigating. One used Mr. Azar, one did not. Somerset did not, but Somerset wound up changing their engineer 2 or 3 times because they just weren't getting the product. But when it came to deciding what to do, they've both wrestled with forming a consensus in the community. And one of the biggest problems with consensus is going to be water flowing from one neighbor's property to another. That's a legal issue. I've been involved in that. And if you're building or remodeling or patios or whatever unreasonably increases the flow of water from your property, they'll call that the natural state. In other words, the state at the beginning. And they've changed the water course, or they've increased the amount of water that flows off. And it flows unreasonably onto the other neighbor's property. That's a lawsuit. All right. Now, don't worry. We don't have any plans to get the Martins Addition Council involved in lawsuits between neighbors. What we want to do is avoid that. We want to do the opposite. And so we're going to be looking for ways to educate the population, the residents, into believing that it's in their interest to do some things. Now, you may want to know what we're thinking about. Well, it's premature to tell you what we're thinking about, because it's silly for us to guess until we have our surveys and we've gone out and interviewed the people who are property owners or near the properties or observed the properties and figured out what's going on and why it happened. If there's been any remedial efforts, how have they worked? If there haven't been remedial efforts, why? If there were remedial efforts and they worked or they didn't work, what was the cost to the property owners? And then, of course, there's the whole public land issue. If you look at think about all the noise that we've had about the Cummings properties from that development. You missed our meeting, but what happened after that waiver, or whatever you guys call for changing a permit, the tanks burst, the water collected. There was not enough tanks, flow wells to collect the water. It pooled up and formed a pool that was about 20, 30 feet wide and about 20 feet deep. I mean, width and length, I'll say it that way. I don't know how deep it was, but I figure a foot or two. And the water flowed into the properties on Shepherd Street with silt, which ruins soil, kills plants, stains things, all the problems. And it is one of the things that the public utilities care about, because if they allow silt to dump into the rivers, they get in trouble with the feds. So they're big on silt. So Michael called them about it after we reported it. And I don't know if they ever did anything about it. there's no feedback. All right. Now, there was discussions between, and you could just talk to the people because I got all this secondhand. There were discussions between the residents who had the silt and water dumped on their property and the developer, and it just turned into a cursing match. All right. There was no acceptance of responsibility for what had happened. So that's an example of neighbor versus neighbor problem in my mind, because the water was increased. That's a lawsuit. That doesn't mean the other families are going to do lawsuits. But what we want to do is create a structure, or recommend to you all a structure that will sort of try to get around that kind of a problem. And the only way to do that, there are only two ways to do it. So when you ask me what we're thinking about, these are some kinds of things. One is to create a regulatory system for stormwater caused by construction to do what the county has refused to do. There's a statute on the books that prohibits construction that increases the flow of stormwater management onto another property with some kind of measurement piece. All right. The Somerset dug up the data on that, and the county permitting office granted 4,200 and change a request for permit waivers. All of them, they granted all of them. And then apparently they've said publicly, yeah, we do that to encourage construction. Aren't we great? We're increasing the tax base. No, you're not great, because you don't have to do that, but that's what they've done. So it's going to be up to Martin's Additions to determine if there's a problem with building in our around here that is increasing water flow onto other properties and onto public land too, because those sidewalks, I can tell you right now, during a rainstorm, the amount of water that comes down, rainstorms have changed. I'll talk about in a minute. But the amount of water that's coming from those lots is making those sidewalks unsafe and making the streets, the water on the streets very deep. Now, so we think that ultimately there's going to have to be some action with the code. I understand that that's a skill set that nobody has. I understand it would require looking at every construction project to see if it's going to increase, and that includes patios, because I've had that water dumped on my property, and to see, but I fix it myself, to see what can be done. And what we're talking about right now is to make the builder prove with a neutral expert that their project will not increase the stormwater flow onto other people's property and onto this village's land. Then we can have our male or female dude who knows this stuff to simply review the study and see if it's credible. That shouldn't be too expensive. So those are pieces of the puzzle that we're thinking about. Where we are, but we don't know. I'm not telling you we have a problem. I'm telling you I see problems, but I haven't done the study and we haven't interviewed people yet. And our expert hasn't said, yes, this is a problem, and yes, this is the way to fix it. We're months away from that. I apologize that we're going to take so long, but I can tell you this, of the 3 or 4 task forces I've been on, this is the most complicated one, requires the most factual study, and is requiring an expert, which we'll get to in a minute, because we can't make these analyses ourselves. We don't have the skill sets. From, the definition of an expert is somebody who has knowledge that ordinary people don't get in their daily lives. It's sort of the way it works in a courtroom. So it's that kind of a situation. So our survey is out. Michael, do you have the numbers of responses yet? Up to date?
As of this morning, there was 95 responses, and that's per household, so 95 households.
Well, that's getting a lot better. So we're getting up to almost a third, I guess, huh?
Yep.
Where we have 300 and something houses?
Correct.
The more responses we can get, the better. If you all, everybody who's listening here today, can just talk it up for the next 48 hours. Let's see if we can get more. Michael's been great. I mean, there's something coming out online all the time. But the more responses we get, the better. We've got to make sure we have responses from every street. We have to make sure that if a neighbor says they saw something on Charlie Jones's land and Charlie Jones didn't fill out a survey, we want to go to ask Charlie Jones why and what's the truth. Now, once we get into that point, then we'll have to be dealing with the expert guiding us, and we'll do this all face to face. And we want to have the expert guiding us with the questions and answers. I mean, I know how to interview a witness, but this is particular stuff. And make sure that we figure out, like if somebody has water flowing into their basement, how has that happened? What caused it? And who are the interested parties in solving it? Is it the village? Is it the neighbors? Is it the county? And then who has the resources to solve it and what resources are available? Like we do know the county is funding, I'm sorry, Chevy Chase View is working with the county to get a 25% grant for people that have to do water control on their property. And the village of Chevy Chase View is also looking at coming up with another 25% of that cost. So that the hope is that homeowners would be more receptive if half of it's being funded, half of the cost is being funded. And of course, part of the cost is maintaining these things. Although the system I put on my property, I spent some good money on that system and I've redone it twice, but the maintenance is next to nothing. It's next to nothing for me. It's just the way we designed it. All right, so what we've done is the training. I think some of you were at the training. We learned about stormwater due to climate change, which is not what we thought it was. According to Azar, it's not that we're getting more rain, it's that we're getting more downburst. All right, and our sewer system was built, according to Gene, was built in the 40s when there were a lot fewer houses here and they were a lot smaller. And so there was more percolating soil to collect it because underneath us, we have underground rivers in Martin's Additions. But what's been happening lately is that they are flooding out or the water table has been rising. And then we have problems like we had at Quincy and Thornapple and one other place where the storm systems failed. The reason why they failed is they don't have the capacity. And they weren't designed to collect water from so many different directions. If you look at the, I hope it's in my report, but if you don't have it, just ask me and I'll send it to you. You look at the map that, I don't know who did this map. It was some utility of Martin's Additions. You'll see that, let's see, on Quincy and Bradley and Raymond and Cummings and Shepherd and Turner and Summit, Delafield, you have either one sewer at one end or none on those streets. Now, is that like the end of the world? No, I can't tell you that because we're going to also have to figure out what it means.
Alan, who's
Yeah.
here, on rainfall. Do you maintain records of Martin's Additions or your backyard rain flows? You don't. You don't have. You know what happened yesterday, but you don't have records going back. Okay. I was looking for local sources of data, so go on, Mark.
Mark, this is, sorry,
ahead.
Mark Jeff Lander here. I just want to, before I know we're getting into the bowels here of this, I just want to say, a one point on the actual data collection. And so I just want to put out there, I think at this point, it's been solely based upon constant contact and email. And while I appreciate the idea that potentially up to 1/3 of households have responded, I'm thinking back, Andrew, the walkability study, where I remember, I think Turner, there were like no responses. And so I just want to share that if this is so mission critical, and Keith is here, you know, and others, one thing to think about is perhaps activate our street captains, and we can print out some flyers and literally like try and get, it wouldn't be 100%, but you could perhaps double it. If this is that important, this is driving it, I see no reason not to, and the cost would be negligible. And I think it would be relatively easy to do it. And plus we have a 4th of July celebration. So I don't want to delay things, but also if we really feel that coverage is a real major issue, and we don't want to have folks come back to us and say, well, I haven't read a VMA newsletter in years. I mean, I think the idea of trying to get a stronger sample might be important.
Yeah, because I'm just curious, you said 95, was that the 95 so far out of 326 houses? Like, which households are they? Quincy, Taylor, Shepherd? Because that's who probably that I know we ran to complete our survey because we're affected by Taylor. So who are responding? And even so, if you're not impacted directly by stormwater on your street in Village Martin Edition, we still need to hear from you because stormwater is everybody's issue. So yeah.
Right.
How do we get that out? Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of publicity. You've done a lot of reminders. I would think that probably the 95, and I don't know, Mark, it's 95 out of 325 homes, probably sounds like how many homes have been affected in one shape or form. Maybe that's the percentage of homes here that are impacted, so people feel more inclined to respond.
Well, in the last note, Michael made the observation that we want to hear from you, especially if you have not been affected.
Again, it's all electronic, so I'm just putting out there that for something that we're considering of high importance and magnitude, I would just put out there that a flyer and activating and working with our street captains, you could perhaps double your response rate. Is possibility.
And by the way, I have not been impacted the way other homes have been. I filled it out anyway because what my impact has been, you know, one of the questions was, is your backyard always kind of wet? You know, even after, you know, days after a rain event, do you have like water coming down from the gutters that's impacting your back stairwells? I mean, that's how it's been impacting me, not the way it has impacted homes on like Taylor and Quincy, and you know, and so I agree. I think everyone should.
Mark, could you get to your request to the council for the engineering study?
Yes, you have it. It's I thought it was up for today for discussion.
It is.
All right, so just let me just respond to this a little bit. The in terms of gutters and stuff, I mean, there's so many things to do, like 6-inch gutters instead of 4-inch gutters, and then running it under your lawns to the street. And then what we would come in with Martin's Addition is instead of running it to the sidewalk, we would run it into the street. There's a million different things to do. We have to find out what people are complaining about. Now, I think 95 is great. I remember when it was 65. So obviously I'm happier, but you know, for safety, we even had a 50% response rate. For walkability, we had a 50% walk rate, response rate. I don't see any harm in taking a little bit of low budget effort to see if we can drive these numbers up a little bit. Why not? What's the harm? And if the captains can run them to houses, because we can now identify who hasn't responded, and if people have social skills and they can go up to them and put their arm around them and make them feel happy that they've come to ask about them rather than guilty, then why not? take 2 weeks to do it. I don't know what the logistics of that are, because I think that's like, I always call them the school spirit committee, but I think that it's, and I say that lovingly, but I think that there's a process to get these captains to do something. And if you guys have to tell me how to do it, and then who will do it.
Yeah, and maybe there's a way, if we can tell which streets are kind of underrepresented. You know, how Constant Contact can focus on one street alone, make it more personal. Hey, Turner Lane residents, we haven't heard from a majority of you on this. So maybe we just, I know it's additional work, sorry, Michael, but maybe there's a way to just kind of focus on individual streets, saying we need to hear from you folks versus just the whole village.
I did go through and look at Mark's request about street coverage, and we had received responses from every single street. And of course, there's not the same amount of houses on every street, so it's not perfectly represented, but every street seemed pretty well represented. So
I
didn't see any like
I send out
glaring.
personal emails to everyone, well, to my neighbors, Raymond Street neighbors.
Yeah.
And the committee is doing that as well. They're reaching out to the people that they know or their streets. And I know, I know like Quincy and Raymond's covered at
Well, I
least.
think one of the questions for the engineer is what kind of response rate is an adequate response for the engineering? If
Oh, that's my responsibility, isn't it? All right, I'll call him tomorrow.
yeah, okay.
And if the task force wants to extend the deadline and do another push or maybe a different strategy to push to get additional people, that's totally fine by me. I mean, we can do that. No problem.
Artificial deadlines, so.
It's an artificial deadline.
Yeah, it's an artificial deadline. Actually, and in fact, the form doesn't actually close tomorrow at midnight. I just leave it open and set it closes tomorrow at midnight. So it's really
So is
artificial.
everybody comfortable with that? That I'll call Azar, and he may not get back to me in 24. He's a pretty busy
Right.
guy, and Fridays are always people's busiest days. And then I can get back to Michael. But then how is the decision going to be made that we're going to just do a continuous electronic push, or we're going to have the captains walk the streets and talk to people that didn't complete one?
Mark, ask Azar, what is an adequate response
Yes.
to produce
Yes.
his engineering analysis?
All right, so I'm good for that, Arthur, and I'll make that call in the morning. Now, let's
Okay.
just say he says, I want 50%.
Right. Then we go.
Then my question is, who do I go to ask for help to get that done?
Come back to Michael and the council.
Could be a
Well,
two-step.
informally, right?
Right.
Yes.
Informally, not, okay, fine. All right, then
Just
that's what we'll do.
give me a
That's
call.
fine.
Okay, now,
That's fine.
now talk about the engineering
I
request.
do want to just say,
Okay.
one thing, knowing that we have representatives of the community engagement here, is just recognizing that they also are very busy families and things. So I mention it as an example of what we could do, but I'm sure that between members of the council and others, it wouldn't take much to canvass the community. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that all the captains are on
Yeah.
it now. We did this for the last event. We
Yeah.
can easily activate them.
Just wanted to make sure.
I think the easiest way to do it is to put together a target list, right? Those who didn't respond for each street, and those, so like you go to like maybe 10 houses a block or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll leave it all to you guys. But anyways, you want to talk about the proposal. The proposal is basically that you let us keep working. So you have to renew us. We expire this month. And we lost Gene. We are exhausted. I can't tell you how hard these applications for funding and the data collection and interviewing people from the other towns. It's just so time consuming. And everybody on this committee is gainfully employed, except for me, I'm half-time, but even I'm pooped. We need not only to replace Gene, but I'm begging you for a sixth body, because my team is exhausted. I'm just telling you. I have to negotiate with them to do work. They're just tired. And this is, I promise you, I'm not trying to be melodramatic. This is the toughest cookie I've tried to I don't know what the metaphor is. Crack, nut, I tried to crack. So if you could do that, it'd be great. Now, why do we need an engineer? The answer is pretty simple. You've seen my report, you've seen my proposal, and you've seen my draft RFP, which Michael's going to make better, I'm sure, if we get that far. But we don't know what we're doing. Only engineers know this stuff. And we don't, our committee can't get a degree in hydrology and all the different engineering things during this 1 year period. So we need somebody, and 10 of the 11 towns that are doing this said, yeah, we want an engineer. Only one said, no, we can do it. So what the engineer is going to do is put this information through a knowledge filter. That makes sense. And help us figure out what questions to ask neighbors, help us to figure out, and the questions are not just causation, which I talked about before, or it's about how do people feel about remediation, and what kinds of things do they think would be appropriate, what kinds of things they think would not be appropriate, just to take their temperature. And then to cross the Rubicon and get to the point where we can get people to say, yes, I would be willing to change a few things in my life or on my property if it would stop stormwater going on other people's property, if the people on the other side will do the same thing for me. That's exactly a negotiation Chevy Chase View is in now. Right. Are we a community? Are we willing to do this together? And so the question, the interviews are going to be strategic. They're not going to be just fact generation. It's to take the community's temperature and see what's possible, and then probably mention in our report things that are possible, but also mention the resistance, unless that's a bad political move. I don't know.
So Mark,
yeah,
the way you're looking at this is a phased process where the first phase will be review of the survey, and then possibly going out with direct interviews with property owners about their explicit, detailed experience to get a picture of what the overall and very specific issues are. Then the next phase is what you're now talking about, coming up with solutions.
Right.
Could we think about this as a phased process?
It is a phased process. You're absolutely right.
Requesting, is that for the entire thing, the first phase, second phase, or what?
It's only to get us through the report, which means you will get a review of the survey. The engineer will be there for the interviews and or to direct the interviews if the engineer can't make all 90 of them or whatever it's going to be, and then help write the report. That's the 80,000. And how I guessed at 80,000. I'll be real. I picked that number up because Chevy Chase View asked for 72,000 from the Department of Natural Resources for the same thing 2 years ago, and the Department of Natural Resources said, yeah, that's a reasonable number, and gave it to him. And I figure it's been 2 years, so it'd be more.
Okay, so we're talking now about a proposed contract to take us to the end of the fact finding and writing your report. Whatever comes after that will be for your committee or another committee to pick up and follow it.
Exactly. I think that I would just squeeze one more thing in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing would be that the engineer is going to participate in the transparency. In other words, if we're going to have meetings with the community, the engineer is going to be there to answer questions and to provide guidance.
Good.
And then also to provide you with guidance as you jump into this thing. Then we'll have to cut it off.
Okay.
Or he'll run out of money or whatever. But you guys will handle that.
Do we have any questions from council members, discussions, views, opinions? No.
Well, I was gonna say,
Yeah, I questioned
Oh,
the
okay.
price tag, first of all, the 80,000 for the report, but I was gonna defer to the longer serving council members on that because this is, again, the first task for anti-Semitism and the water task force are the first two task forces that are new to me in my office. So is that what did the walkability study cost?
I
of that?
went
Is it
back
in
and I
there?
reviewed,
Yeah.
going back to, 2010, they had, Jakubiec, who's, helped with the building codes and
Mhm.
walkability.
Yeah.
There was about 25,000. That was
Okay.
two thousand
And that
and
was
ten.
14 year.
Walkability
inflation.
was considerably less. See,
Mhm.
we did do a survey, but he
Mhm.
was a much smaller constraint.
Mhm.
That was more like 3,000 to 5,000 over a 2-year period.
Right.
So this would be by far the largest.
Mhm.
So this, but as Mark says, this number came out of Chevy Chase View's
Mhm.
experience, and everyone says, yeah, it seems about right.
I was
Well,
just
when the
gonna say-
Department of Natural Resources said it was right,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what made me comfortable with it. But Kathy, to deal with your concern, it should be a not to exceed
Right.
not to exceed, right?
contract.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
and then have them bid out the pieces.
Yeah. I mean, to me, pedestrian safety, all that is one of the most critical and critically important missions of this council to make sure that our residents are safe as they're walking along the streets, on sidewalks and all that. And I think we've really focused, previous councils and the current one, I think, with Michael's help, is focused on this and is working to address a lot of issues. But this particular, stormwater,
Mhm.
I think is so critical because it's beyond, it's beyond just your own safety, but it's your homes and quality of life. And it's so complex, it seems. I mean, figuring out like engineering the streets and sidewalks is a very complicated. You need experts. I think this takes it to the next level in terms of complexity and how to address. So I'm not surprised at the possible cost here.
Mhm.
And I think we need to do whatever it takes to get this. I'm not gonna say we're gonna get it under control, but to address the concerns
Begin to
and
understand it.
understand exactly how we
Right.
can fix this.
Right. So we don't need to we don't have to approve a budget at this moment. But just looking around, are we comfortable with going forward
Well,
with this? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple things, but the short answer is I believe so. I just wanted to put a couple things out in terms of the cost issue. So first, I think it'd be nice to perhaps look into, because Mark had mentioned, I think 10 of 11 have looked at hiring an engineer. And if they've had some of the same questions that might be specific, for example, around county regulations or other things, is there some possibility of leveraging that? So we're not looking at that as a de novo exercise, if that makes sense, right? We've got DMA, very specific things, but there may be some things that may not have to be redone.
That's why hiring, because they do have that experience.
Exactly.
I think, but the critical thing is gonna be very local.
Yeah.
Looking at the surveys, looking at actual water flows, looking at whether how much is coming from groundwater versus stormwater,
Right.
and so on. So a good part of that is just gonna be data analysis, data
Right.
and engineering analysis.
But I think we can do both. I think we can do both.
Yeah.
We are going to, over the summer, reach out to all of some work that quite frankly, some work wasn't finished. And we don't need to go into why, but we're going back to the 10 towns to collect whatever we didn't collect the first time around, to find out where they are and to find out where they're going, and to share all that with the engineer. And we're going to do the same thing with accounting. So our plan is to reduce, this may be a terrible metaphor, reduce the amount of shovel loads that the engineer has to dig by doing the work for that person, at least the starting place for it. And there is one engineer, and this, you know, maybe this is how you make these decisions, that's doing this in 6 or 7 of the towns. Right? That's something for the deciders to think about if that's important or not. It's up to you guys. I'm gonna have no role in that.
Just another couple quick thanks, Mark. Extremely helpful and amazing job by the team. Couple of just quick thoughts before you take the vote or just recognition of moving forward. What I really like about the possibilities here are some very tangible things, and I'm not so concerned about the cost, because if I think of, for example, residents like Doug Grove, you know, the Kraft family, Joel Klicksberg, and if we think about the cost that they sunk in, it probably aggregates to over 80 or more thousand, much more.
More.
And
yeah.
so I just put that out there because we recognize that if through this, if we even study those as case examples and a few more, that the cost of this will make itself over many times. And that's, so I don't see that issue. And then the other piece that comes out of it, I think will be very helpful, are the potential shovel-ready projects that we could either assist in, or perhaps the county or even state has programs that, again, our residents or even our municipality can apply for or cost share with. So I think the cost is negligible when you think about all these things.
And Mark, as you're looking at solutions, you are
Yes.
on the building code committee.
Yeah,
Are there things that could be done in the building code to
I
increase
think that's gonna be
permeable
critical.
surfaces and so on?
I
Okay,
think that I've been thinking about that in terms of, I really think that, I don't know how my committee is gonna vote, but I'm leaning towards making sure that we have some stormwater management skills. We don't have it, you guys don't have it, we're gonna have to bring skills in, but I was thinking about this, and that is that, my thought is that the other towns are all gonna deal with building code too. And why can't we share an expert? Right? Why
Yeah,
not
sure.
just pitch it as a shared effort? Why can't we get to these towns, and this is political, so it's in your bailiwick, not mine, but there may be some of these projects that could be collaborative with other communities. You know, one of the things we're hearing is that Brookfield Road is dumping, sections 3 and 5 are dumping water on Brookfield Road, and that's going into the backyards of Shepherd and Cummings and stuff like that. I don't know if any of that's true, but right now that's the urban legend. And so it may be that there's cooperation to be there. So we will, in our report, if we can find opportunities for collaboration and cooperation, we're going to bring those to your attention.
okay, good.
Last
Michael,
point. Last
go
point.
ahead.
Don't think about fixing things for the next few years. This rainfall is, we don't know when, if it'll ever change. It may. And you should be thinking 20 years out, 25 years out. It's what are we doing for the entire community to get us through the next 25 years?
Okay, Michael, on the next meeting, we will need a budget amendment to include in the special projects,
We have the capital reserves.
we can do it in out of the capital reserve. Oh,
we
that's
have-
right.
We have,
Okay,
That's why
so we don't have to allocate it specifically.
it's already allocated.
Oh, good. Okay,
So if you
great.
all want to approve it, you can approve it, and then I can post the RFP whenever you all approve the.
okay. We have the draft RFP. We would have to turn it into
A
a,
final RFP, yeah, and
Final.
I'll have Ron review it as well.
right,
as I
okay.
do with all
Okay,
the-
great. We're on the way, Mark.
Great, this is fantastic. All right, and then, of course, as soon as you can get me 2 new bodies, let me know, or at least let me know how long that's gonna
We
take.
will put out in our call for volunteers that you are looking. Okay, thank
Okay.
you very much, Mark.
Thank you. Appreciate it all. Thank you very
Good,
much.
thank you. Okay, let's go, where are we here? Treasurer's report.
Awesome. So I'm going to lead in and I'll make this short, but I think everyone, I mean, we just went through all the end of year committee reports and recognizing how amazing the volunteers are. And we have our celebration this coming weekend, right? Am I off this? 30th, too.
You're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking
The 4th of July. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Saturday.
The reception for
Yeah.
the volunteers. Yeah,
That's
that's
Saturday.
Saturday. Every volunteer who's out there, every council member, we are having a, what is it called? We're
Volunteer.
celebrating our volunteers.
Volunteer appreciation
Volunteer appreciation.
reception.
Do we have an RSVP, or is it just kind of?
I have been collecting emails and I've sent out multiple reminders to everybody. And I have a list of people that have said no, a list of people that have said yes, and a list of people that haven't responded. I haven't counted those lists up yet, but
Okay,
Good, thank you.
okay.
Okay, so we're about the treasurer.
Treasurer report. Okay, I'll make this brief. It's in the packet 37 through 39. Bottom line is, as we've talked about, we are in enviable position. So this is the 11th of the 12th months, because the reporting for this month, which is the end of the fiscal year, won't occur until July. But just putting in perspective, just some numbers, we are over $700,000, as they say, in the black for this planned cycle. So that'll bump up. That is quite extraordinary. That's almost our entire annual budget. Now, that again is due to a couple sweeteners that we know of that are one-off or near term, the ARPA funds and then the interest rates. So again, we're in great shape. And as Arthur and I and the rest of the council know, really, if you take away the sweeteners, the overall expected outlays versus income is very close, right? There may be even a little bit of an ebb where we may see in some future years where some of those expenses may go a bit above the income, again, without those sweeteners, or if our interest rate income, declines, which we expect it will. Putting that in perspective with our reserves, and we are very, reasonable with our capital budget projects and things like that, that really shouldn't be an issue for a decade or more. And, again, we're in good shape, but just putting in perspective that you take away the sweeteners, we've got a great reserve, but if you look at the actual annual income versus our expenses, we're getting very close to that gimbal lock. So just something to be aware of. With that said, very optimistically, we are in great shape.
Just to further what Jeff just said, I remember not that many years ago when our interest income was like 38 cents for the year. And so we are now in
Over $250,000.
over $250,000. So, okay, let us go to a manager's report. But just before that, I wanted to bring up one point that came up at the very end of the week, yesterday, I think it was. There's a group of mayors in this Chevy Chase area who have been lobbying for a change to the state law that they want Martin's Addition to sign on to. And we will be hearing from our legal counsel after we end the formal meeting on this. But for the residents, and to put it on the record, there is a potential issue that the county is pushing for multifamily dwellings. We have no say in that directly. I mean, we don't vote on the county council. But what we do want to maintain is the ability to maintain our building codes as far as setbacks, permeable areas, lot coverage, and so on. So if there's a 3-family structure, we wanted to explicitly have the authority to maintain all those other things that we currently maintain. They're going from single family to multifamily does not change our ability to do it. Some people say it's already there in the code, it's latent. The local mayors are saying, let's make it explicit. And so they are asking for us to sign the letter. Look, to me, it looks okay, but we will be hearing from our legal counsel later about what some of these issues are. Any question or discussion on that for the public record?
Sure, for the public record, I mean, again, this is something we'll discuss with Ron. One thing that I had mentioned, I shared with the council as part of our discussion and questions is simply, I don't have a particular issue around multifamily dwellings at all. It's more of within municipalities where you have perhaps, and that's where I would like to have a historical record. Do we have anything on record now that says that we have multifamily dwellings within VMA? And if not, then by being silent on the issue, you know, how could that potentially or drastically change the composition of future construction? So I am not entirely comfortable with being silent on that and just wanting to understand and further how our building code would then perhaps protect us, because we still have setbacks, we still have certain dimensions, but just recognizing that I don't think it's as simple as deferring or punting the issue on multifamily dwellings, especially if we haven't really permitted or we don't have any existing.
It's not within our power, as far as I know. Ron will tell us more
Yeah,
about.
so I just wanted to put that out there. That was just my question.
Right.
And then how are we protected? And it's not so much the idea of being against it, like I said, it's more of just the understanding of it could drastically change, and knowing that the purple line is coming in. I mean, developers, we saw in the past year how developers are very aggressive with how they're building on, you know, completely tear downs. What happens if now they have a new set of rules that allows them not only to do what they're doing now, but then build it as a multifamily dwelling? What would that mean? And what are our protections that we have to keep consistent with what our residential, you know, characteristics are?
Okay, and I think that's it. Any other? Yeah. Michael.
I know 6. Thank you. We still need to schedule the CPR class. I'll be asking the council what would be good for you all. I was thinking the fall after kind of people are back from their summer vacations, but we can talk about that offline. I'm going to skip through these here, and if anyone has questions or wants to come back and ask about something specific, we can. I am compiling all of the reports you have heard tonight and the ones you haven't, as well as a couple of reports here from the village office, including Doug's building report for the entire year into several different formats to present to you all, including I was thinking we could republish them in the newsletter for July. I thought that would be a nice way to get a little more airtime for all the hard work that all the communities have done. As was said earlier, I'll be attending the Maryland Municipal League's summer conference. I have a number of tasks while I'm there, including networking with municipalities in the county and across the state, but also looking into several different, you know, what other people are doing, what vendors are there to provide help with our the development of our survey, and several other things.
Talk about the parking enforcement.
Yes, I will get to that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where you were here.
Still under administration. The council meeting will hold a closed meeting. We need to talk about this. Actually, in early July, we agreed that we would hold a closed administrative meeting to get you all sworn into office for the new year, but then also do a little bit of strategic planning and planning out the next fiscal year 25. That's really important to me and has been recommended by my profession. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'll be scheduling that with you all soon. The July council meeting is scheduled this year. Last year, we ended up skipping the July one and doing the August one. This year, we're doing the opposite. So we're having the July meeting and we'll be skipping the August meeting. Several of the other towns also kind of take August off a little bit and use that time for projects and stuff. I would like to do that here as well, including I would like to skip, if you all agree, the August newsletter. That is the practice in other communities to skip August, but we never have done that. So I leave it up to you, but unless someone feels really strongly that we should have an August newsletter.
You're still putting out weekly ones, so.
Yeah, the wrap up will continue to go out, and I'll send out standalone emails if anything happens, but.
One very in the weeds question. Are we having an August movie night?
We are having an August movie night.
So could you put July, August newsletter and just send it out like that? And then you just put the dates for the August.
Yeah, that's a good point. For the calendar feature for July, I will go ahead and include all the events that are happening in August. I think that movie night is like August 2nd or so, if I remember correctly. So, yep, good point.
Okay,
Under maintenance, as Arthur alluded to, I think I have a parking enforcement solution. This is been a long time coming. We've heard from a lot of residents and it's a constant frustration. I get multiple complaints a week about parking violations. Well, I have made contact with someone at Montgomery County's Department of Transportation's Parking Enforcement Division. They have informed me that one of my predecessors, I'm not sure who, actually signed an agreement with them to get village parking agents to issue county parking tickets on their behalf. The county would get revenue, and no, Ron, you wouldn't have to go to traffic court. They said that all they would need from us is a witness, and that witness would need to be the parking enforcement agent. And that parking enforcement agent could even be a contractor. It doesn't even necessarily have to be me. So it could be Wayne or someone like that. I've spoken to Wayne. He would be willing to take this additional responsibility on. And I think I would like to get, if we do have this capacity, I would like to have it. That way, when we receive calls that someone's parked in front of a fire hydrant or in front of a driveway or in front of a no parking sign, we could go down there and ticket. So this is a very exciting development and new knowledge to me. I requested a copy of that signed agreement, and there will be some requirements about how we build that system. You know, we have to go pick up the actual ticket books from them. They get all the revenue from the tickets, but we have to pay for enforcing it and issuing those tickets. So anyways, if anyone has any questions about that, or
I had done some homework here, doing some searches online. I was looking for services that you could just hire, contract services to hire. There weren't any, but there are a ton of folks out there selling various apps that the parking enforcement officer takes a picture, it records it, it prints it prints onto a violation ticket. That is then useful in court. Everything is tied together. Michael at the municipal league meeting is going to be talking to people about those kinds of things.
there are some software solutions. I also need to see what the county's system provides, because I believe you have to upload the ticket, your copy of the ticket, to their system within a certain number of days, and there's a whole process on their end.
Right.
So whatever software we develop or purchase to process this on our end would need to sync with that county system. So
Right.
we're a long ways away from figuring out all the nitty-gritty details of how this would work. But this is news for me, at least, knowing that we have this ability to maybe actually build our own parking enforcement division.
I have
know-
one question. It's just a matter of opportunity, cost, and time. So is this like an opt-in? So if you get a complaint, you'd be activated? This isn't the idea. We're going to be devoting like 4 days a week surveying for.
And the chief of this parking enforcement division that I spoke to did say that other municipalities that have implemented this, including Garrett Park, have a signed agreement as well. They normally start with a warning and have entire information campaign that we're now enforcing parking tickets, and here's how this is going to work and stuff. So even if we did develop the program, there would probably be several steps before someone would actually have to pay a $45 fine or
What I
something.
meant is it's based upon a complaint though, like it's not.
No. it's
We would
basically
have parking agents,
walking.
and I could walk around.
He's gonna be.
If
our-
someone calls me and tells me that there's some, and I'm here, and someone tells me they're parked in front of a fire hydrant, I could just walk over there and write the ticket. That's the idea. But we could develop it in any sort of way. Yep. And I imagine initially there would be a lot of tickets, and then it would kind of wind down once people realize we're actually serious about it and we're going to enforce it. So
Good.
I tell people to move their car on a daily basis. Today, I told 2 people to move parked in front of the exit to the parking lot. So this is a constant.
There's your solution to the exit problem. Park a truck
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Well, I do think traffic control measures and enforcement is not what we're talking about here, only parking stuff, but yeah.
Right. Okay,
So-
good. Moving on.
Okay. Number 7, Brookville Road, on top of needing to hire a new surveyor to come back and survey those 6 properties. Also, there's been some development on the stop sign at Bradley Lane. I know that had been requested by a number of residents and several council members. The initial conceptual plan included a crosswalk across Brookville at that location, which is where the other side of the sidewalk in section 3 ends. So people kind of naturally cross there anyways. So we're putting in a crosswalk. But Andy in section 3 and Shayna, the manager of the village of Chevy Chase, have both started an email chain calling for a stop sign to be added there. And so there's some conversation about that. And I told them that I assumed we would want to sign on to that if there was some sort of effort to get the state highway administration to put in a full stop sign there.
Such a tough intersection.
It is awkward because
Offset.
they're offset.
Especially coming from.
But those
Bradley,
are-
yeah, Brookville.
Like Oxford has a stop sign. Other places have stop signs and that are way less used than
Yeah.
than this place. In this corner, I mean, Bradley is a very busy cross street.
So
So-
looking for a surveyor, do you have names? Are you talking? to
Yes, I
people?
have a list. The surveyor we used before has closed up shop. Keeps happening to me. And has gone to work for another engineer that I've had conversations with, but it's unclear if he's willing to come back and actually do this. I haven't been able to get through to him. So I'm ready to just move on to other surveyors and start calling people, see who's willing to do
Yeah,
it.
start calling.
It's just 6 properties
Yeah.
and maybe fixing a little bit of the current survey or correcting a couple things. Like I think there was a tree at one of the sites that we visited that wasn't picked up in the initial survey. So it's correcting some of those things. The tricky part with that is a lot of surveyors that I've spoken to don't like to work on other people's surveys. They want to come back and redo the entire survey themselves because they can lose their license if something they sign off on is incorrect. So that's a sensitive thing.
Well, we may have to do that.
But yeah, and I'm hoping the surveyor that we can hire will be under the $10,000 limit, so I don't have to go through another RFP process. So I think if we just focus on the 6 properties and get those meets and bounds is what they call it. I don't know why they call it that, but the definition of where we need an easement for those specific properties. Ron, is that right?
Meets and bounds.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
I will be working on some improvements to the village website. There's been a couple issues with when you click on documents, the wrong document will open, or a couple of the directional navigation features have broken. If you go to try to find the committees, you can't just click to it from the menu bar. You have to like click into the page and then click again. So there's some number of features like that I'm hoping to fix, and maybe we do a facelift at the same time, add in some fresh pictures and stuff. So that is coming in the fall, probably. I am in contact with one of an engineer, a computer engineer at our hosting site. So I'm hoping to set up a meeting with them and walk through what that would entail, doing those fixes, and maybe giving me some training as well so I can better update the website and stop breaking things. Okay, real quick under buildings, we have issued a driveway permit to 6701 Brookville Road. And I didn't write this down, but I learned that the code's a little confusing. So Ron corrected me on this. For neighbors need to be informed of promptly need to be informed of building permit applications that are happening adjacent to their property. I thought that was only for like actual building projects, but it's for all permits, including things like there's a shed on Delfield. So I've added that step into my checklist of things to do for every single permit application we've received, and already done that for the shed on Delphine. So it's for everything, whether it's a driveway, a shed or anything like that. So from now on, we're making sure we include that for all projects. And that's just an informational email that goes out to the neighbors. It says it needs to be in writing. So as long as I have a contact information for them, that works. I've included Doug's June report in here. We have received an application, but it's not yet quite complete. I think that for 204 Oxford, they've submitted like 6 versions of their plans and they keep updating little things. So we're waiting for a final application so that we can announce that one and hold a resident informational meeting for that one. And that is a full tear down rebuild. So we're aware of another house coming. And that concludes my report. First day of summer, full moon tomorrow. Remember to water your plants. It's very dry.
Okay, any other council comments, questions? Okay, resident questions, observations, wisdom.
Marty has raised her hand.
We have one hand up that has been observed. Marty.
Hi there, and I want to commend you on a really helpful meeting. This was very informative and helpful. Mark Schaefer, thanks for the good update on the water stuff, and I appreciate the council tackling that very seriously. Michael, I just want to give you huge kudos for the parking enforcement thing. That's been an issue for so many neighbors, and I am just delighted at the sort of prospect of actually getting a parking enforcement officer in here. So thank you for that. And on the issues discussed earlier about the parking lot behind the shops, which has been a cause of concern about safety for many years. I'm wondering if we can also, in addition to the various options we talked about, get a traffic calming device right there at the top where on Turner, where people come out, like y'all said. I mean, people kind of escalate, to go up that hill and pop right out into Turner. And I think a rumble strip or something on Turner, maybe on both sides of that exit from the parking lot onto Turner. Just some traffic slowing device there too, because in my observation is that the cars coming up and down Turner are not expecting, especially people coming from the park back toward Brookville Road, tend to come quite fast and are not expecting anybody, either a car or a kid on the scooter, to come popping out of that parking lot. And a rumble strip on the, I guess it would be east side of the entrance to the parking lot, or the exit from the parking lot rather, I think might help, because it would slow that traffic and maybe, as Andrew, like you were saying, stop somebody from getting really badly hurt by being hit. So please consider not just a gate or better stop signs. I like the stop signs that flash red and light up. I think they help. But I think a rumble strip there to slow the Turner traffic would really be a huge safety improvement. So please add that to your list. And last but not least, thanks for your help with the election this year.
Hey, Marty, your ears must have been burning just in terms of my thoughts, because I thought perhaps a speed hump on the did we say east side
of Turner.
East side of Turner. I'm not sure you can do it on the west side, though. I can tell you there have been on many occasions when I take a right onto Turner, someone just flies out of the parking lot and takes a right towards Brookville with close calls as well.
With a wide turn.
Yeah, but I think that makes
Yeah.
sense. And, with the new shop downstairs, there now been quite a few deliveries where the truck stops right in front of the shop on Turner. So making it difficult for folks to come out of the parking lot as well, but those are just temporary issues. But I agree that the long sought after speed bumps for Turner, we might finally get one, but just for the parking.
That we do have the power to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and rumble strips work too. You can put a rumble strip on the Brookville side, and you can put a speed bump on the east side of the exit there,
Right.
and slow it both ways, because it is
Mix it
really
up.
dangerous.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you
Well,
very
thank
much,
you,
Andrew,
Mark.
for focusing on it.
Good.
Steve Howard.
Dave.
Yeah, I have two things. One, please keep in mind that if you're putting a lot of, I guess, defense mechanisms on the south side of the parking lot by Turner, likely people are going to then back up and illegally increase going out the other way on the north side out the Turner exit. So you got to be careful not to, I guess, rob Peter to pay Paul. By increasing the safety at the south end, we increase the danger at the north end. So try to keep that in mind. Secondly, speaking as a street captain, I think it's rather ambitious to call it a street captain network at this time. As Michael has told you and has said, there's only a handful of us, and there's a bunch of streets that are missing captains, and every street captain has a different level of comfort. I wish that everybody in the VMA would fill out the survey. I wish that every street had an engaged street captain, but that's not really the case right now. So I think the process is we report as volunteers to the CEC. So any requests from any committee would have to go through that committee to the street captains. And keep in mind, most of us are really just comfortable handing out flyers and welcome bags. But, not all of us are going to be comfortable knocking on doors, as Mark put it, taking the arm of a neighbor and asking them to fill out the water survey. That is not something a lot of us are comfortable with. So I think we need to just keep that in mind as you're trying to increase this survey. I think the only real way to get to 50% is going to probably be to target the people that you want to fill out the survey, have the committee contact those people directly. But putting any kind of burden on the street captains to increase it, I think needs to be taken, kind of realistically at this point. So that's all I have.
Good, thanks for those observations. The traffic engineer did have recommendations for the entry into the parking alley there. Well, we just didn't talk about it tonight. Okay.
I had one issue for Taylor Street residents who couldn't attend tonight. There's been an issue coming up of door-to-door solicitors, and that some people feel are kind of aggressive. I think it's various items that are being peddled, magazine subscriptions. And this is, the warmer months of the year, so people are outside with their little ones, or, you might have a teenager home alone, and they're coming up to the door. And I think one particular seller has been making the rounds to different municipalities, and there's been a lot of buzz about it on like the Rollingwood listserv. And so I've been asked by a lot of our residents, and what is our stance? What are our rules about soliciting, and what can you do if I know what to do. I know what I would do, but I think our residents are asking what to do in the situation if you're approached by an aggressive solicitor at your home. I know some people have tried to be neighborly and engage and actually, agree to these services, and then their accounts have ended up being hacked, and so it's not always on the up and up, and this seems to be a growing issue, and this was quite recently and frequently too. So I didn't know if anybody on other streets had come across this issue or had heard from residents, and I don't know if it's something we could address with I was hoping our officers might attend tonight. I wanted to ask.
Right, well, our
about
legal counsel is
I
here.
have an update on this specific issue. I included it as a community reminder in the wrap up last week, and I'll continue to do so. I know that Como Park Police Department is investigating a scam related to door-to-door salespeople. It is a First Amendment right to solicit and go door to door. But in Montgomery County, you are supposed to be licensed if you're selling something. So there is a thing about whether they're licensed or not. Yeah, we have heard a number of complaints about a scam, including people in the village that have been scammed and given away credit card information and had to, report it on to their credit card company. So I would advise everyone to not answer their door
Or
to
if
salespeople,
when you see
and
who's there, close the door.
avoid those
Try
situations.
not to hurt anybody.
And I have spoken to our police officers about this, and they're aware of it. And they're aware of it, not just here, but everywhere. But I've been in contact with them about this issue specifically. So, yeah.
Good, thank you.
Awesome.
Are there any other resident hands up?
Nope.
I was just
Okay.
gonna add
Yeah.
one quick comment. I think just acknowledging, it looks like the gang is all back together for at least another year, I guess, another election has come and gone. So looking forward to working with everyone and
Yay.
yeah, yay team.
Yay,
So
that-
here we are.
Congrats.
Okay,
Congratulations,
unless
David.
there are any other comments, observations, witticisms, no, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Are we
To
going?
to enter closed session.
And we will be going in, we will adjourn to go into closed session to receive advice from our council. Do I hear a motion? We have a motion. We have a second. We have all in favor? Aye. Okay, we are now going into closed session to entertain, to hear